Catelyn watched her son mount up. Oliver Frey held his horse for him, Lord Walder's son, 2 years older than Robb, and 10 years younger and more anxious. He strapped Robb's shield in place and handed up his helm. When he lowered it over the face she loved so well, a tall, young knight sat on his grey stallion where her son had been. It was dark among the trees, where the moon did not reach. When Robb turned his head to look at her, she could see only black inside his visor. "I must ride down the line, Mother," he told her. "Father says you should let the men see you before a battle." "Go, then," she said. "Let them see you. It'll give them courage," Robb said. "And who will give me courage?" she wondered. Yet she kept her silence and made herself smile for him. Robb turned the big grey stallion and walked him slowly away from her, grey wind shadowing his steps. Behind him his battle guard formed up. When he'd forced Catelyn to accept her protectors, she had insisted that he'd be guarded as well, and the Lord's bannermen had agreed. Many of their sons had clamoured for the honour of riding with the young wolf, as they had taken to calling him. Turin Karstark and his brother Eddard were among his 30, and Patrick Mallister, Small John Umber, Baron Hornwood, Theon Greyjoy, no less than 5 of Walder Frey's vast brood, along with older men like Sir Wendell Manderley and Robin Flint. One of his companions was even a woman, Daisy Mormont, Lady Mage's eldest daughter and heir to Bear Island, a lanky 6-footer who had been given a morning star at an age when most girls were given dolls. Some of the other lords muttered about that, but Catelyn would not listen to their complaints. "This is not about the honour of your houses," she told them. "This is about keeping my son alive and whole." And if it comes to that, she wondered, will 30 be enough? Will 6,000 be enough? A bird called faintly in the distance. A high, sharp trill that felt like an icy hand on Catelyn's neck. Another bird answered. A third, a fourth. She knew their call well enough from her years at Winterfell. Snow shrikes. Sometimes you saw them in the deep of winter when the godswood was white and still. They were northern birds. "They are coming," Catelyn thought. "They're coming, my lady," Hal Mullen whispered. He was always a man for stating the obvious. "Gods be with us." She nodded as the woods grew still around them. In the quiet she could hear them, far off yet moving closer. The tread of many horses, the rattle of swords and spears and armour, the murmur of human voices, with here a laugh and there a curse. Eons seemed to come and go. The sound grew louder. She heard more laughter, a shouted command, splashing as they crossed and recrossed the little stream. A horse snorted, a man swore. And then at last, she saw him. Only for an instant, framed between the branches of the trees as she looked down at the valley floor. Yet she knew it was him. Even at a distance, Sir Jaime Lannister was unmistakable. The moonlight had silvered his armor and the gold of his hair, and turned his crimson cloak to black. He was not wearing a helm. He was there, and he was gone again, his silvery armor obscured by the trees once more. Others came behind him, long columns of them, knights and sworn swords and free riders, 3/4 of the Lannister horse. "He's no man for sitting in a tent while his carpenters build siege towers," Sir Brynden had promised. He has ridden out with his knights thrice already, to chase down raiders or storm a stubborn holdfast." Nodding, Rob had studied the map her uncle had drawn him. Ned had taught him to read maps. "Raid him here," he said, pointing. "A few hundred men, no more, Tully banners. When he comes after you, we will be waiting." His finger moved an inch to the left. "Here." Here was a hush in the night. Moonlight and shadows. A thick carpet of dead leaves underfoot. Densely wooded ridges sloping gently down to the stream bed. The underbrush thinning as the ground fell away. Here was her son on his stallion, glancing back at her one last time and lifting his sword in salute. Here was the call of Mage Mormont's war horn, a long, low blast that rolled down the valley from the east to tell them that the last of Jamie's riders had entered the trap. And Greywind threw back his head and howled. The sound seemed to go right through Catelyn Stark, and she found herself shivering. It was a terrible sound, a frightening sound. Yet there was music in it too. For a second she felt something like pity for the Lannisters below. So this is what death sounds like, she thought. Came the answer from the far ridge as the great John winded his own horn. To the east and west the trumpets of the Mallisters and Freys blew vengeance. North, where the valley narrowed and bent like a cocked elbow, Lord Karstark's war horns added their own deep, mournful voices to the dark chorus. Men were shouting and horses rearing in the stream below. The whispering wood let out its breath all at once, as the bowmen Rob had hidden in the branches of the trees let fly their arrows, and the night erupted with the screams of men and horses. All around her the riders raised their lances, and the dirt and leaves that had buried the cruel bright points fell away to reveal the gleam of sharpened steel. "Winterfell!" she heard Rob shout as the arrows sighed again. He moved away from her at a trot, leading his men downhill. Catelyn sat on her horse, unmoving, with Hal Mollen and her guard around her, and she waited, as she had waited before, for Brandon and Ned and her father. She was high on the ridge, and the trees hid most of what was going on beneath her. A heartbeat. 2, 4. And suddenly, it was as if she and her protectors were alone in the wood. The rest were melted away into the green. Yet when she looked across the valley to the far ridge, she saw the great John's riders emerge from the darkness beneath the trees. They were in a long line, an endless line, and as they burst from the wood, there was an instant, the smallest part of a heartbeat, when all Catelyn saw was the moonlight on the points of their lances, as if 1,000 will-o-wisps were coming down the ridge, wreathed in silver flame. Then she blinked, and they were only men, rushing down to kill or die. Afterwards, she could not claim she had seen the battle, but she could hear, and the valley rang with echoes, the crack of a broken lance, the clash of swords, the cries of Lannister and Winterfell, and Tully, Riverrun and Tully. When she realized there was no more to see, she closed her eyes and listened. The battle came alive around her. She heard hoofbeats, iron boots splashing in shallow water, the woody sound of swords on oaken shields, and the scrape of steel against steel. The hiss of arrows, the thunder of drums, the terrified screaming of 1,000 horses, Men shouted curses and begged for mercy, and got it or not, and lived or died. The ridges seemed to play queer tricks with sound. Once she heard Rob's voice as clear as if he'd been standing at her side, calling, "To me! To me!" And she heard his direwolf snarling and growling, heard the snaps of those long teeth, the tearing of flesh, shrieks of fear and pain from men and horse alike. Was there only one wolf? It was hard to be certain. Little by little, the sounds dwindled and died, until at last there was only the wolf. As a red dawn broke in the east, grey wind began to howl again. Rob came back to her on a different horse, riding a piebald gelding in the place of the grey stallion he had taken down into the valley. The wolf's head on his shield was slashed half to pieces, raw wood showing where deep gouges had been hacked in the oak. But Rob himself seemed unhurt. Yet when he came closer, Catelyn saw that his mailed glove and the sleeve of his surcoat were black with blood. "You're hurt," she said. Rob lifted his hand, opened and closed his fingers. "No," he said. This is Torrhen's blood, perhaps, or..." He shook his head. "I do not know." A mob of men followed him up the slope, dirty and dented and grinning, with Theon and the Great John at their head. Between them, they dragged Sir Jaime Lannister. They threw him down in front of her horse. "The Kingslayer," Hal announced, unnecessarily. Lannister raised his head. "Lady Stark," he said from his knees. Blood ran down one cheek from a gash across his scalp, but the pale light of dawn had put the glint of gold back in his hair. "I would offer you my sword, but I seem to have mislaid it." "It's not your sword I want, sir," she told him. "Give me my father and my brother Edmure. Give me my daughters. Give me my lord husband." "I've mislaid them as well, I fear." "A pity," Catelyn said coldly. "Kill him, Rob," Theon Greyjoy urged. "Take his head off." "No," her son answered, peeling off his bloody glove. "He's more use alive than dead, and my lord father never condoned the murder of prisoners after a battle." "A wise man," Jaime Lannister said, "and honourable." "Take him away and put him in irons," Catelyn said. "Do as my lord mother says," Rob commanded, "and make certain there's a strong guard around him. Lord Karstark will want his head on a pike." "That he will," the Great John agreed, gesturing. Lannister was led away to be bandaged and chained. "Why should Lord Karstark want him dead?" Catelyn asked. Rob looked away into the woods with the same brooding look that Ned often got. He killed them. Lord Karstark's sons, 𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀 explained. "Both of them," said Rob. "Torrhen and Eddard, and Darren Hornwood as well." "No one can fault Lannister on his courage," Glover said. "When he saw that he was lost, he rallied his retainers and fought his way up the valley, hoping to reach Lord Rob and cut him down, and almost did." "He mislaid his sword in Eddard Karstark's neck after he took Torrhen's hand off and split Darren Hornwood's skull open," Rob said. "All the time he was shouting for me. If they hadn't tried to stop him, I should be mourning in place of Lord Carstark, Catelyn said. Your men did what they were sworn to do, Robb. They died protecting their liege lord. Grieve for them. Honour them for their valour, but not now. You have no time for grief. You may have lopped the head off the snake, but 3/4 of the body is still coiled around my father's castle. We have won a battle, not a war. But such a battle, said Theon Greyjoy eagerly. My lady, the realm has not seen such a victory since the Field of Fire, although the Lannisters lost 10 men for every one of ours that fell. We've taken close to 100 knights captive, and 12 lords bannermen, Lord Westerling, Lords Baneford, Sir Garth Greenfield, Lord Eston, Sir Titus Brax, Malor the Dornishman, and 3 Lannisters besides Jaime, Lord Tywin's own nephews, 2 of his sister's sons and 1 of his dead brothers. And Lord Tywin, Catelyn interrupted. Have you perchance taken Lord Tywin, Theon? No, Greyjoy answered, brought up short. Until you do, this war is far from done. Robb raised his head and pushed his hair back out of his eyes. My mother is right. We still have River Run. Greetings, one and all. If you enjoyed that, you can support me on Patreon, Redbubble, or with a channel membership. Or simply like, comment, and subscribe to catch any and all future DQVO videos. And as always, my thanks for watching.